Hey everyone, it's Tom Carl. Welcome to another edition of Politics in Perspective. No shortage of things to talk about, whether it's Iran, whether it's the Supreme Court, or Mandami, the Democrats. So let's just get right to it. I am excited that Dennis Kneale is going to join us, a media critic, but a former CNBC star, to talk about tariffs and what's going on in the media world today and the Democrat politicians. I'll cover the tariff decision and the class warfare of the Democrats, and then give you a quick update at the end on California. All right. Thanks to Ex American News, 7 p.m. Sunday nights, worldviewtube.com, AUN TV, Rumble, and YouTube, where you can catch us. And don't forget to get my book. So let's just go to it. The Supreme Court, 6-3, decided against Trump when it comes to tariffs. Now, there's the historical issue here, there's the legal issue here, and there is the political issue here. So let's start with the political. At the end of the day, this takes Trump off message. He had hoped that he would get a victory, that his tariff program would go forward, and that he could reshape international trade in the manner in which he wanted and declare that victory throughout the summer. He cannot do that now. Now he has to pivot. Now he has to make another decision on how to get there. If you recall on this show, I said Trump's biggest race is a race against time with the Supreme Court to getting these deals done. Because if he negotiates a trade deal and that trade deal gets done, then that can sit in place and the Supreme Court doesn't overturn these deals. But now he has to pivot. Now he has to decide where he's going to go next, how he can exercise power. They didn't eliminate his ability to do certain tariffs. They just said you couldn't do it worldwide because that law on which the administration relied upon doesn't give him that power. Now, there is other avenues, but you can't just do what Nixon did, which was formally upheld, which is a 10% tariff worldwide. So the Trump people and administration will need to pivot, but they also need to be on message. And so getting back to a affordability, the economy's better, re-elect us message has certainly been dealt a blow today, or I'm sorry, on Friday by the Supreme Court. But we have to see what they do to get back on message. So the legality of this, while we should all be happy that we have a working system of government with 3 branches, the judiciary looked at this narrow case, meaning the administration relied on one law, language within that one law, and the manner in which they applied tariffs. The Supreme Court didn't rule on whether the Trump administration has other tariffs which it can use. If you read some of the dissents, within there is a history of other ways in which it could be done. So look for it to be done. But from a legal perspective, and this happens all the time. I've been an attorney 39 years, which is roughly 38 too many. This raises more question in this decision than it answers. It doesn't give a blanket rule with regard to tariffs. It only gives a narrow decision. So this is just the beginning of the tariff discussion, but politics may drive what happens next more than the legality. And then let's look at the history of this. Throughout American history, even though the Constitution gave tariff power to the Congress has delegated it to the president, which means they could do something again. But will the Republicans in Congress do something that will help their cause this fall? Because let's face it, they won the 7 battleground states. The majority of those battleground states are in the Rust Belt, where reindustrialization matters. So will they simply not pursue this policy because they can't get together on it and they don't want another loss? Or will they try and do something for Michigan, for Wisconsin, for Indiana, for Ohio, for Pennsylvania, all these states that had manufacturing at their center of their economy, and that have been hurt over time. We'll have to see. But this is the beginning of the issue, not the end. And that's my take, the opening statement take on the tariffs. Part two, my opening statement goes with the Democrats and their burgeoning war, their burgeoning class war on America. There's no way around this anymore. California offered a billionaire's tax. Mondami in New York City, I wrote last year that Mondami and Bass and Johnson would define the Democrats in significant degree during this election year. Mondami is engaging in class warfare. You had AOC on the international stage doing that. But the Democrats have become that party of class warfare. And this begs the issue. What is their ultimate goal? Because class warfare doesn't work for republics. What do I mean by it doesn't work? Well, at the end of the day, what happens in class warfare is you pit the one part of society against the other, class by class, and this warfare. And that has had horrible results over time and throughout history. But it also means that you are using taxes to tax one group against the other. And the problem with that is it harms the economy. And the worst thing for the middle class and those less fortunate is a overburdened economy which isn't expanding. The most important thing and helpful thing you can do for those just getting out of school, for those in their 20s looking for a job, for those in their 30s looking to climb the ladder, for those that have been displaced by AI and other things, is a vibrant economy that is growing. But the history of class warfare doesn't go for vibrant economies. It goes for saddling some and keeping them down, but it doesn't help those. As Lincoln once said, you don't improve the future by trying to help only one and tear down the rich. That's not how the economy works. That's not how a good republic will work either. So the problem we're facing right now among these Democrats is they're obsessed with this class warfare. And if that class warfare continues, you will see America suffer. And the issue for the Democrats is that once a party engages in class warfare, it doesn't give it up. That defines them. And if you look at the left, the radical left of the Democrats, who control so much of the power within the Democrat Party, class warfare is their calling card. They're not going to change from that. And that is bad news for their party, bad news for the country, but also an opportunity for Republicans to talk about how the American dream wasn't built on pitting one class against the other, but on economic success. And that's what they need to talk about in this midterm year. Well, that's my opening statement. We'll be right back with my guest, Dennis Kneale, to talk about all the Supreme Court tariffs, the Democrat hopefuls, and the rest. Hey everyone, welcome back to Politics in Perspective. I'm Tom Del Beccaro. I'm pleased today to have, this is our difference maker interview, Dennis Kneale, who's got a podcast, What's Bugging Me. Hey Dennis. Dennis has a long history in the media, and what I like about that is he has worked for a number of outlets he is in fact a media strategist. So I think that's important for us to talk about this because the media has so much influence on the way Americans view things. But he's not just that. He has a best-selling book on Elon Musk, which is entirely of interest because he has an interesting relationship with Mr. Musk at this stage. Isn't that true, Mr. Kneale?
Yes, it sure is. I've got breaking news for you when you're ready, but I'll suspend it.
All right, there you go. All right. So let's first, though, you heard my opening statement about the Democrats and class warfare, and I know you wanted
Yes.
to weigh in just a bit on that. So
Very,
have at it.
very well said. And here's the thing. Again, I understand on the X platform, and when I do my television hits, I do a lot on Newsmax, and I did work for the Wall Street Journal and Forbes and CNBC and Fox Business, and you know, America was always the land of opportunity. And around Obama time, Democrats started turning it into the land of envy. And they started to argue that because billionaires have wealth, that's why we don't. And they forgot that these guys, a lot of them are heroes of capitalism. They worked incredibly hard. And they forgot that when these billionaires get rich, other people get rich too. Case in point, Jeff Bezos, what is his wealth now? Somewhere over $250 billion. And Mom Donnie came out and said, there should be no billionaires. And oh my gosh, that's just more wealth than anyone should have. Okay, but Amazon is a $2 trillion company. That means $1.8 trillion in wealth is held by other people because of a company that Jeff Bezos created. And some of those holders are nursing pension funds and firefighter retirement funds. Let's be happy about it. Amazon, which just now on page 1 of the Journal today cleared Walmart as the largest revenue company in the world, over $700 billion in a single quarter. I mean, Amazon employs, I think it's 1.2 million people who earn at least $21 an hour. That's a pretty good salary. It's 3 times the federal minimum wage. Amazon lets me get really good priced, good quality goods sent to my home overnight, sometimes the same day. It's made my life better. So all of these things, and if the price we have to pay is that, oh my gosh, Jeff Bezos has too much money, so be it.
Dennis, I'm glad you brought that up. And people can always just Google the picture of him sitting in this room by himself at a card table, a folding table where he started his business, right?
Right.
And now he's amassed this. And we had Thomas Philipson, the economist, on talk about the average billionaire when they start a business create $95 billion economy around them. But
Right.
he's gone beyond that.
Incredible.
But yeah, and you wrote about, let's just get right to it. You wrote a stirring book about Elon Musk, and why don't you just get just an overview about that and why'd you choose that topic?
The leadership genius of Elon Musk, and it offers 11 lessons of Elon for a better life because I love alliteration. And each chapter has a lesson, and they actually can help you borrow from Elon. What would Elon do for a better life and a better career? I really admire this guy. I've always been, admiring of heroes of capitalism and the triumphs and travails along the path to creating new wealth. They are heroes, and business is drama. I learned that at the Wall Street Journal and at Forbes magazine. And if you look at some of the lessons that Elon has shown, dream huge and spend decades pursuing it. He went in 2000 to Moscow. I interviewed a guy who took him there to try to buy 2 rocket engines for $5 million so he could go to Mars. And when he told them, I want to go to Mars, they spit on his shoes. It was so outlandish to even try that. Well, it's 25 years later, and he's still at it. He hasn't got there yet, but he's built SpaceX into 90% of the launches around the world and a over $1 trillion value company. Yet another one. Incredible what he's done. But his rules are things like dream huge and pursue it. Always bet on yourself and double down. I failed to do that in my career. I was so worried about getting bounced out of television that I didn't buy $1 million apartment when I could have in around 2010. And as a result, I wasted almost $1 million on a rent for the next, 15 years or whatever it was. My gosh, because I was just too afraid. But we should bet on ourselves. We should take a bigger leap. We should take the bigger risk. We should live louder, live out loud. And lesson one is defining for the whole Elon ethos. Lesson one is, you know what? All of this just may be fake. So just go for it. I believe that Elon truly believes this. The chances are pretty good that this might be all one big computer simulation. And so the most entertaining outcomes will happen, the most opposite of what you expect. And let's say it's all bull. Why not live bigger? Why not live larger anyway, just in case? And when something befalls you that's terrible, just know it's part of the video game plot. It's for the
Well,
entertainment.
speaking of this, I'm not sure I'm going to play the video game with you, but what I am going to say is, and I know the difference between Europe and America today is the average 20-year-old, because those economies are so moribund for so long,
Yes.
those are overregulated, overtaxed, overgoverned economies where the 20 somethings have a difficulty getting a job. But you come to America and Mark Zuckerberg, or who was unknown. You worked at Forbes. When Forbes 400 first came out, Zuckerberg wasn't even alive, and now he's in the top 10,
Yeah.
right?
Twice.
Top five.
Yeah.
So it is that is what makes America exceptional in many ways, is because you can do what you really can do just about anything you want in America if you're willing to fight for it.
Now, that's a white privilege view, because if you're an oppressed underclass and a member of, a minority, of course, you have no chance at all, right? Robert Johnson, BET Network, the first black billionaire, Oprah Winfrey. The thing about these billionaires is it gives us something to strive for. Okay, we're not going to make 1,000th of that or 2,000ths of that, but it's possible. And a recent Wall Street Journal story said only 25% of us still believe in the American dream, that our children will have a better future than we had, a better life. And I want to say to those 75% of the doubters, wake up and work harder and make your dream come true. This is nothing being given to you. You have to go out there and grab it. And too many people today, especially young people, bring attention to themselves by being hurt or upset about something. They're always focused on obstacles instead of getting stuff done. And I really think the young have just lost themselves. They've just lost their way. And it's why they're marching for pro-Palestine, tacit pro-Hamas, and they're not marching for thousands of citizens killed by the government in Iran. Where the hell are you? Where is your belief system? It's just based to whether you get a text or not telling you to show up at a given place at a given time. Shame on all of them.
Well, speaking of children, I want to bring up the Democrat hopefuls, or those dominating. And we have a slide here for you to take a look at. This is the face of the Democrat Party today. You have Mondami in the lower left. You have AOC, Newsom, and HQ herself, Kamala Harris. I know you have some choice words living in New York for Mondami, but you just mentioned this next generation and their view. Either, in my view, they're either entitled, or they just don't think they have to work hard. But these are their leaders. What does that say?
It's so sad. And by the way, another lesson in my Elon book, The Leadership Genius of Elon Musk, is most people are loafers. Work harder than you ever have before. Elon does this. He delivers. And when as a leader in any business you do that, you raise the bar for your other employees to work hard too. No one can outwork him. And we don't work hard enough. I mean, when kids in their 20s are talking about work-life balance, you're being lazy, man. Don't have any
My
balance.
my father was an Italian dictator in the house. I had no work-life balance. He was knocking me off balance if I said the wrong thing.
Good one. I like that one. I'll be stealing that one. I'll just use that somewhere.
Okay, so Mondami, what a liar. Oh, don't worry, I'll give you everything for free. Turns out.
What an unmitigated disaster. And Mamdani is the example of another lesson 11, which is the most likely outcome in life is often the most ironic one, most opposite of what you would expect to happen. And then a city, New York City, where I lived for 43 years, where I've just moved a month ago down to South Florida, bam,
Look at you.
down Brooklyn, a mile from the Brooklyn Bridge. I heard 10 sirens a day. I haven't heard a siren in a month. I mean, I've got wildlife all over me. The shadows of eagles and great blue herons flying overhead. It's just incredible here. Wait, where's I going with that now? I've just lost my thread.
Oh, Mandami, and what a
Mom Donnie.
disaster.
Okay, so I left just in time. I left because of mom, brother, Mom Donnie. I live two blocks, a few blocks away from my mom here, help take care of her. Okay, Mom Donnie. So he is an illustration of the most unexpected outcome because it's a city of 2 million Jews. He's a Muslim. He only became a citizen in 2018. He's been groomed by Muslim groups since 2014. He had 23 Muslim groups backing his campaign and contributing to it. Also, 24 unions. This, according to Asra Nomani, a great reporter, and she did this on FoxNews.com. Okay, and then first day at midnight, he wipes out a couple of executive orders that were protecting Jews and going against anti-Semitism, just to let the Jews know that they're really welcome. It's supposed to be 1 million Muslims in New York, by the way. He lectures to the people and starts speaking in this Middle Eastern accent, and you must follow the Quran. And I mean, it's millions of New Yorkers who speak English and Spanish, and yet you're talking to us as if we should be a Muslim audience. You see, Muslim in Times Square. I just saw a tape. The music and the tone and the chanting in Times Square. They want to take over, and they do not mean us. They do not. What's the right? But anyway, they don't care about us at all. And if anything, I think a lot of them would like to hurt us and take over entirely the way they've taken over the UK. I mean, my God, I read there's 70 towns in the UK that have Muslim mayors. There's that Pakistani rape scandal where for years, I think it's 20 years, and they're saying like thousands, tens of thousands of young white British girls raped by Pakistani Muslims, and the government covered up because, well, we don't want anyone to, feel bad against Muslims and Islam. It's Islamophobia. Obama invented that, and now this we've got in the center of capitalism, the most capitalist city in the world, New York City, Wall Street, New York Stock Exchange, and they elect a socialist. Oh my God!
And worse than that. So, one thing that has struck me about, look, I knew he was lying, uh, but the speed at which he flipped, and Spanberger. I mean, I'm a moderate. I'm, blah 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 blah. I knew she was lying. Reagan said long ago they campaigned to the middle and governed to the left. But I
Right,
was shocked at how fast Spanberger turned on,
right.
on
It,
and did it.
and
What
we
does
should,
that say? What are the
yeah,
Virginia voters? What are they thinking now?
they take off the mask, these leaders, and they really do bare their claws. How many metaphors am I going to mix here? But we should, watch that and listen to that when that happens. Look, I'd like to blame Mamdani for this. I'd like to blame his Muslim backers. The fact is, my fellow New Yorkers are the ones to blame. And the Democrat Party, the best you could do against this rookie novice who has no job, has never really accomplished anything, the best you can do is Cuomo, a guy who sent 15,000 the deaths of 15,000 nursing home patients because he let them bring COVID patients into the nursing homes. And, and then they didn't even bring up that issue. Instead, we don't like him because he hit on some women. I mean, that's the best you've got. And, I love Curtis Sliwa. I voted for Curtis Sliwa. Okay, I mean, eventually because he earned it. There were times in the early '80s on the streets of Brooklyn and New York when I was really relieved to see those red berets come around a corner. Okay, but that's the best the Republican Party has to offer. The Republican Party in New York and in Oregon, I've found, and in Washington, D.C., is like the Washington Generals, the team that got paid good money to lose thousands of games to the Harlem Globetrotters. They're just there feeding at the same trough. Hey, we're number two. Why try harder? We're in there.
Okay, before we turn to your next project, though, I have to get your take on the brilliant foreign policy forays of AOC in
Oh,
Europe recently.
right. What
Uh,
was the gaffe? She came out and she showed that she was stupid because she didn't know what was the thing.
Taiwan.
Right? There was something there was a gaffe. I can't
Oh,
remember.
Venezuela being instead of an
Oh,
equatorial country, which it
below the
is,
Venezuela, she thought it was below the equator, but indeed it was above the equator.
but it is an equatorial country, meaning around the equator. But look, she is so out of her.
League.
Uh,
And look, you
Go
know
on.
what? If she weighed 250 pounds and had acne scars on her face, she wouldn't get a second's notice. But she, from the start, was this spirited, filled with life little hottie. Man, I'm sorry. She's just a little hottie. And she still is, although she's a little jollier. Kind of wondered whether other things were going on there. But what kills me is if she truly has the hubris and the stupid advisors to think that she should run for president. Oh, please do. Please run for president. Be Buttigieg's vice president. Be Kamala's vice president candidate. I'd love to see a Kamala AOC ticket. By golly, that'd be wonderful. I mean, the Democrats, and I was a lifelong Democrat. Just the other day, though, I went to driver license, Florida, Delray Beach there, to get my driver license, swap in from New York, okay? I got it done in 15 minutes. I just got my new deal license in Brooklyn, okay? They gave me an appointment for 12:15. Don't you show up any sooner than 15 minutes early now. I sat there 3.5 hours waiting for my driver license in Brooklyn, filled with immigrants, okay? But down in Florida, 15 minutes. And at the very end, to get my driver license, I have had to show a passport or birth certificate, my original Social Security card from 8th grade, 2 mailings from a utility or a bank with my name and address, new address in Florida on it. I had to show all of that, but you don't have to show ID to vote. Great, okay.
Yeah, right.
Then up comes the screen, click, do you want to register for voting? I said, sure. And Republican or Democrat? And I've been a Republican since I started voting. And then for the first time in my life, I clicked on no, I've been voting Democrat, registered Democrat all my life. I blew that, damn it. I registered as a Republican for the first time ever, even
All
though
right.
the party's better. But
In the words of Victor Laszlo, welcome to the fight.
yeah,
Okay, we're going to get to your next project, but one more thing. Media strategist Gavin Newsom. I say he's on an anger tour, and when I coach people on uh, their media appearances, but their debate performances especially, I say the first job in the debate is to be liked. People like to like the person they vote for.
yes,
Gavin
yeah,
Newsom
hero.
seems to do nothing but scowl out there in the world.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts on that?
Whenever I see him, I always think about the wolf in Little Red Riding Hood. He just strikes me as a secretly evil guy. And all of his life, he's used his good looks to get ahead. He's the guy who was probably quarterback in high school and ran for student body president in college. And I mean, and he's just using his good looks. How anyone, you see, here's the thing. All right, the mainstream media are failing to tell the real story. They're underestimating the Trump economy. They haven't ever come around and said, okay, everyone was wrong about the impact of the tariffs, which we could get to. And this guy is counting on people being stupid enough to believe that things are okay in California, to not be seeing how those fires. Listen to this. I came across this yesterday. The 2020 fires in California were so devastating that they released more carbon emissions into the atmosphere than 18 years of carbon savings. 60 million tons of carbon savings in 18 years, wiped out by 127 million tons of forest fire smoke. And guess what? It's not true that, oh, it's because of global warming. Forest fires are burning everywhere. No, in Oregon, 75% of the fire damage happened on federal land. State lands weren't burning for the most part because they're thinned out. They're not covered by the same greeny regulations that stop thinning out, cooling the forest, and removing the forest floor that provides kindling in the federal land. Okay? And so all those carbon emissions from all those fires wiping out 18 years of savings. And then in 2022, my friends, more fires. The ones that killed all those homes in Los Angeles that now they're going to try to buy and put low income apartments on. Okay, those fires again eclipse the 18 years of savings. So 2 years of fires in a row in a couple months or weeks wiped out the equivalent of more than 3 decades of your stupid regulations aimed at capping emissions and struggling and straining industry. Shame on all you green Tifa zealots. Total shame on you.
It is true. We could talk about California forever, but let's talk about Oregon. I first went to Oregon late, right after college, to go to a friend's wedding in Portland. Right, and Portland was charming. It had this downtown square. It was just beautiful. I and now you look at it and it's a ridiculous war zone.
Oh my God.
So
I
you
got
have a project about Oregon. What?
yes.
Why Oregon? And tell us about your
Yeah.
project.
Okay. And by the way, you would kind of coach me to be kind of funny and sarcastic. I'm sorry if it's being too angry and strident. But I'll try to do a U-turn on that. Okay. So
Okay,
we're
Gavin.
goners, which is a reference to all the people who are saying I'm gone from here. This place is too crazy. It's too much like Portlandia. Um, First of all, about downtown, that pretty downtown where you went. By the way, let's remember that 1971 Governor Tom McCall in Oregon said, we have a beautiful state. Come here, visit, just don't stay. Okay. And that was always the attitude. And the problem is, too many people, liberals from California and Washington, are flooding the place and joining with the liberals there and just ruining it with their policies. So that downtown is probably Pioneer Square, you're talking about, maybe downtown Portland. You know, there's open air fentanyl use. So I drove by a site where they're selling 3 fentanyl pills for $1. This is because the state in 2020, backed by Soros money, voted in favor of legalizing even the hardest of hard drugs. And then of course we had literally a 1,500% increase in annual deaths from fentanyl over a 3-year period, and over to like 1,000, 1,500 in a year in this very small little city of 650,000 people. And so finally they had to restore the law in 2024, but the cops still don't enforce it. There's still open air use. The NGOs that are paid over $700 million a year in the Portland area for the homeless, a city population homeless 7,000. That's a lot of money. 727 million.
700 million for 700,000 people.
Oh, no, it's for 7,000 homeless,
7,000 people.
14,000 total, including the 7 in the entire county. 727 million last year, and the government doesn't have programs. They hand it out to NGOs, which have no accountability, no audit. They don't have to answer to anybody about how they're spending it, and then they pass out tents to let you camp on the street. They're everywhere, the homeless camping. And Mamdani wants the same in New York. He just said we're not going to sweep homeless camps. You've got them handing out tinfoil so that when you chase the dragon, Steely Dan song, you put that powder there, you put that lighter under there and you smoke it. It'll be clean tinfoil. They hand out clean needles. They hand out so much food that it becomes rat feed. It ends up feeding the rats because the homeless, they're high on drugs anyway. They're not hungry. They're not hungry. You rarely see a fat addict, okay? They end up stopping eating, and yet they keep handing out food. And Kevin Dahlgren is an amazing guy on the X platform. Follow him because he worked for homeless services companies, nonprofits, and he then broke from them and realized, if you guys end homelessness, you will be out of a job. And he interviews hundreds of homeless people. And when's the last time someone came up to you, helped you out, and said, let's get you back with family or off the streets or off drugs? Never. They just come
Exactly.
and, hey, how you doing? You want some tinfoil? Yay. It's just so weird. And it's because they have this freedom in Oregon, bodily autonomy. You know, you have the right to choice right up to the last moments of birth, right? You have the right to that choice. You have the right to everything with except the COVID vaccine. You have no choice there. You have to take the COVID vaccine, but otherwise, yes, it's bodily autonomy. This was the same thing driving, I think, Mom Donnie in New York, who said, no, I'm not going to have the police remove the homeless from the streets in winter. If they want to stay there, let them. And then 18 homeless people froze to death on the streets of New York. In 43 years in New York, I have never seen that happen before. I'm stunned by that. But that's more of that, well, it's their own choice. You know what? The road to hell can be led by your own choices if no one intervenes every now and then to say, wait a minute, you ought to really think harder about what you're doing here. 70 or no, 90% of the homeless in Oregon, Kevin Dahlgren estimates, have drug problems. 70% have mental illness problems. And all this interrelates to create crime problems, break-ins at businesses. You know, I talked to Amy Nichols, Cheerful Amy with the Cheerful Tortoise and the Cheerful Bullpen, two now sports bars that have been in place for 75 years in Portland. And she's had 10 break-ins in a year. There's a guy there, I think it's John DiLorenzo, a lawyer. He has a proposal. Hey, Multnomah County, I think it is. You have to compensate a crime victim. Right now, if my car is broken into, you don't even send a cop. I have to go fill out a form on a website. That's how bad policing is there. They're down to 1993 levels because of defund the police. So up comes this proposal. If I get hit by a crime, the county has to pay me $2,500. And it turns out that's not covered by insurance. So Amy would be entitled to payments of $25,000 for 10 break-ins. And this is a way of waking up the county and the city and saying, you've got to start enforcing the law. You've got to start arresting people. The police arrest people, but the county runs the jails, which have fewer beds than ever before, because again, defunding the police, etc. So the cops have stopped arresting people because they know that there's no space to hold them. So it's just a total mess.
So but you're burying the lead, which is not a good media strategy. Tell us exactly what your project is, your new book.
It's on how the well-meaning, ridiculously liberal policies have led this beautiful, once wonderful state off a cliff until the people stand up to stop it. And it's a warning and a canary in a coal mine for the rest of the blue sections of the country, because you guys are killing yourselves. You're hurting yourselves with your ridiculous policies. And you don't look at outcomes at all. You're looking only at intent. And while your intent is high, your outcomes are just junk. Shame on.
Yeah, look, San Francisco just lost closed down a magnificent on Market Street mall, 3 or 4 stories. Nordstrom was on the third. It was unbelievable. Now the whole thing's closed down under similar circumstances. And it was Nordstrom in, oh no, that's different in Seattle, but there was Nordstrom in Portland as well, where I was.
You know,
It,
retailers are covering something up, Tom. The reason they're really closing a lot of these stores in these blue cities is because of shoplifting, because of
yeah,
gangs of young youths of color, okay, mass, who are clearly led by organized crime in some way, if not the Five Families, some other newly created entities. And the shoplifting is just killing them. The margins in retail are very thin, and shoplifting can cut that by 30 or 50%. And so that's why they're really shutting, and they won't say that because they're afraid of being called racist.
yeah, 100%. All right, we don't have that much time left, but tell us what your thoughts on the tariff ruling and what you think Trump will do now.
And okay, so I was really upset about this. And then I see the NASDAQ is up 1% in response. And then I talked to this guy who runs millions of dollars in other people's money out in Portland. He's the pariah in Portland. Not allowed to use his name. And he says, I said, this is how dare they, the Supreme Court. And he says, no, this is fine. This plays into Trump's narrative as, look at that, they all hate me. They're all against me. He said he'll find a way around it. Another guy just told me, oh no, I heard that they anticipated this. That means they already have a plan. And remember, there are over 100 countries that already signed deals. They were so happy to have that over. They're going to go right in there and say, hey, our deal's fine. And so I don't think this has to be bad. But what this does show is how awful Chief Justice Roberts is. This guy saved Obamacare. Okay, a Republican appointed Chief Justice saved Obamacare because he said, look, this penalty that you have to pay if you don't get on a plan, it's not a penalty because that would be unconstitutional. What it really is, it's a tax. Now, the word tax for that penalty didn't show up anywhere in Obamacare, but freaking Chief Justice Roberts found a way to invent it in that ruling, cut to Donald Trump and the tariffs. He's basing it on this International Trade Act from decades ago, but it doesn't have the word tariff inside that act. And now suddenly Chief Justice Roberts says, well, the lack of that word, we have no choice but to, you know what? There were rumors, outlandish rumors, that Chief Justice Roberts was compromised. It happened at the time of the 2020 court rulings. A very prominent lawyer came out and said stuff that shocked me. I thought for sure he'd be killed for it. But, this ruling is so ridiculous that I sometimes wonder, Chief Roberts, what is your problem? How could you invent?
Okay, so before you go any farther, so I've been attorney 39 years. I'm reading that whole Obamacare decision. The Chief Roberts, the whole thing turns on 2.5 pages from him, gets down to 1 paragraph, and he calls it a tax. But taxes can only start in the House. The bill started in the Senate. So even though he came to that ridiculous decision, at that point he should have said, oh, this started in the Senate, so it's unconstitutional. Right. But he didn't. So go ahead and finish. Yes. Is he compromised? Because he's awful.
I'm so stealing that. I'm so making that my own and saying that in my next.
All right, I'll be on your podcast and we'll do that.
That's incredible, Tom.
It is. And people forget that. And I read that and I thought, Jesus, this is who's the number one. All right, listen, when you expect to, do you have a working title for this book?
Oregoners.
Goners.
They're gone from the stick, baby. Oregoners. I'd like to think I made that up, but I didn't.
So when do you think it'll be out?
Later this year. I'm literally writing chapters. I mean, I put in 12 and 14-hour days in the past 2-3 days every night, writing chapters as we speak, because it's such a breaking story. I mean, you just had 2 gang members, gang affiliates shot, a married couple. The woman runs like a prostitution ring, allegedly, and they were shot by not ICE, and there was protests at ICE, but by the Border Patrol. And every politician at 6 o'clock that night is there expressing sympathy for the families of the shooting victims, et cetera. And then the day later, the Portland police chief has to come out and admit, actually, we had them under investigation too. They're suspects in a couple of shootings around the city in recent months. And yet all you guys were there saying this was so terrible what the Border Patrol agents did. It's just lopsided and crazy, man. And it's got to be called out. But they're so crazy inside that environment that they don't even see it anymore. And I've got so many prominent people helping me, and they're fed up, and they're really speaking up. And they're speaking up on the record. But the book publishing industry takes forever to get a book.
Yeah, tell me about it. I have a couple of books over my shoulder. Look, we're definitely out of time.
Okay.
When your book's out, let's bring you back. All right. Thank you Dennis. Thanks so much for coming on, and we'll be right back with Politics in Perspective. Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed Dennis. He's actually a riot if you're just hanging out with him, but I hope you enjoyed him on Politics in Perspective. Thanks again to Ex America News and AUN TV, worldview2.com. Check us out at politicalvanguard.com. Please get my books that are over my shoulder, The Divided Era and The Lessons of the American Civilization, and join me on Substack at Thomas Tobacaro, and of course on Twitter. So I wanted to give a California update because we're post the first debate where Steve Hilton got a stunning 60-something% of the listeners said that he won the debate against the 6 other Democrats. And now we have the first post-debate poll that isn't a consultant-driven poll. And what I mean by that is it's an independent poll. It's by Emerson. And if we can hold this picture here, you have California, everybody needs to remember, has this ludicrous system. It's called the jungle primary top 2. And what it means is in June, the primary will be held. And the governor's race, there's like 30 something people running for governors, names you've never heard of, but it's very easy to qualify. So you get your ballot and you have like 30 names of people. Excuse me. Well, that means you have to go looking through. And that whoever finishes in the top 2, regardless of party, so it could be 2 Democrats, is on the November ballot. So the goal here, if you're on the right, is to get one person in the top 2 against the Democrat. Now, here's the most recent poll. And it's not altogether different than recent other polls, but it shows Steve Hilton ahead here. Now, the other Republican is Chad Bianco. He's up 14%, and so is Eric Swalwell. But Eric Swalwell represents a very interesting case study here because Eric Swalwell says his primary residence is in, I believe, Maryland or just outside DC. Well, why do you care about that? Why can't he run for governor? Because California law says that you have to live in California for the last 5 years to be governor. Well, if your primary residence is Maryland, how are you going to pull this off? Now, what would happen if he's on the ballot? Would the California Supreme Court kick him off? Now, I know something about this because I sued Jerry Brown when I was chairman of the California Republican Party when he became attorney general, because I said he wasn't qualified to be attorney general. Why? Because the statute said that to be attorney general, the top lawyer in the state, that you had to have an active license for 3 of the last 5 years. Well, he had suspended his license. So he clearly did not qualify. But the courts rolled over and said, it's close enough. By the way, try that with a police officer or the IRS. Well, it's close enough. So will the Supreme Court, it's very clear law, you have to be there. So if Swalwell stays on the ballot, there is a case to try and kick him off the ballot. I'd rather he got on there and got kicked off afterwards, but we'll have to see. In any case, that's where we are when it comes to the governor's race. And it matters because the voter ID is going to be on the fall ballot. And you also want a Republican at the top to drive out Republican vote, because that matters to all of the people running for city council, water board, education, all of those things. Those Republicans benefit from someone at the top of the ticket, because if you study this enough or barely at all, you realize that there's a fall off if there's no one at the top of the ticket, much less vote, and then the down tickets don't get the votes and they lose. So it's important for someone to finish in the top 2. That poll shows Hilton up there. He is also the top fundraiser in the race as well. Now, we have another minor California update. You saw me ripping on Newsom's anger tour. He was asked if he's running for president. And this is a California Post headline. He gave a 2-word response, but basically he said it was wildly inappropriate to be talking about this. Wildly inappropriate. You know what was freaking wildly inappropriate? For him to be in Germany ripping on the United States and ripping on Trump. That's wildly inappropriate. And why was he there? Because he is wildly, uncontrollably running for president. So for him, and now also remember, this is the same guy who said that The one thing he hates is when a politician lies to you while he's lying. But that's Gavin Newsom, isn't it? That's the best he can be, Gavin Newsom, which is he said image is his armor. Image is armor, which means, of course, he's all superficial. He doesn't have it. Now, President Trump has amassed all these ships in the Gulf, and one thing that is particularly troubling about that is the fact that Russia and China decided to have military exercises outside the Straits of Hormuz, which, of course, is the area where so much of the world's oil seems to flow. So this is an interesting dynamic, and we'll bring my producer Annie in at this point to talk about it and talk about it in this sense, which is what does Iran represent as a country when it comes to the axis of evil, the new axis of evil, which used to be Iraq, Russia, and North Korea. But for me, the mullahs are at the center of that. What are your thoughts, Annie?
I would 100% agree with you. I actually wrote a piece on Substack and I went over the history of Iran as a nation and Russia, and I closed that into where you see the most strongest trade, not alliance. There is no alliance between Russia and Iran, but there's the strongest time of history of Russia and Iran is during the last 40 years of the mullahs in Iran. They have found the way that keeps Russia and China very interested in them. From breaking all the rules, from willingness to find ways around all the sanctions, and technically having the same common goal, which is the destruction of America, the mullahs are kept in place because they are the most useful business partners in the world, or the plan of Russia and China. Now, I would say this though Russia and China both have, kind of showed interest in some of the military actions going on. However, I don't believe Russia will stick with the mullahs if it comes down to dropping bombs. Just like Russia took its hands off of Madara, they will take their hands off of mullahs too, if it's forced. China is a very different story. China will stick with the mullahs until their last breath. Not because they're in love with mullahs, no. Because mullahs are the last weapon China has left in the world that can be used by them.
And also, they would prefer to be able to buy their oil if they can. All right, folks, we've run out of time for the show this week. Annie, tell them your book again and when it'll be out.
The Architecture of Jihad will be released on March 21st. However, the pre-order for Kindle is available on Amazon right now.
Wonderful. There you go. And my book over my shoulder, The Lessons of the American Civilization. Catch me on Substack and X, Instagram, and I do a lot on Facebook as well. I'm Tom Del Beccaro. Thanks for joining Politics in Perspective, and we'll see you again soon.